China's new national security law has only been imposed on once free Hong Kong for about 6 weeks, and already Chinese communist strongman Xi Jinping has already cracked down on an outspoken critic, and that is media tycoon Jimmy Lai. He was taken away in handcuffs on Monday morning, along with both of his sons, from the offices of his company that includes his daily paper, Apple Daily, which is a pro-democracy newspaper. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is your right angle on the end of Hong Kong. Really, it's they're calling it the end of the old one country, two systems. But well, you know what? Actually, I'm going to save that for later. I just had a thought, and I'm going to share it with you. Bill, we'll start with you. Monday morning, 200 Hong Kong police, and I've seen reports unconfirmed that the Hong Kong police have basically been infiltrated with a lot of mainland Chinese police who are much more willing to do this kind of thing. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, 200 Hong Kong police, or maybe more, showed up at Jimmy Lai's headquarters early Monday morning, took away 25 boxes of documents, along with Jimmy Lai and both of his sons. Now, it used to be in Hong Kong, before this national security law was passed by the rubber stamp Congress up in Beijing, that Hong Kongers had the right to a jury trial, and a jury trial in Hong Kong. For all we know, he could be whisked away to Beijing in a moment for a kangaroo court. What do you say to the people of Hong Kong in a moment like this, when essentially 150 years or more, 170 years of legal protections have been taken away literally overnight?
Well, first of all, the evidence that the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing hired the same publicity firm that handled King George III and Charles Manson continues to gain evidence. I don't know what they can do to continue to tarnish already tarnished image, but this is well on the road to that. Yeah. Here's the thing here's the reveal, Steve, in my opinion. The reveal is 200 policemen. You may remember when that a filmmaker here in America had the funny idea that he could make a movie about Muhammad and had First Amendment rights and so on. And then we find out later that he was the cause of the entire Benghazi uprising. And they sent 23 or 26 state troopers for him in the middle of the night. You don't need 26 people to arrest a person, and you don't need 200 people to arrest a person either, which means that this was not about arresting him. It was about showing everybody else that they were arresting him. Yep. And that's all you need to know about this. If they wanted to arrest him, they could have sent 2 or 3 guys in the middle of the night, gone to his house, could have done this relatively subtly. But when you send 200 people down, what you're doing is you're using a sledgehammer to squash a mosquito, and you're trying to make sure that everybody around, all the rest of the mosquitoes, hear the sound of the sledgehammer. And that's what's going on here. And so if you ask me what I would tell our friends in Hong Kong who are lovers of democracy and all of those other wonderful things that at least half of this country still believes in, I would say to you that the only people that do things like this are people who are terribly, terribly, terribly insecure and frightened. This is what you do when you are unsure about your power, unsure about your popularity. This is what people like Saddam Hussein would do, or any other gas bag, low-level tin horn tyrant does, because they're scared and they want you to be scared. The evidence that they're scared is that they sent 200 people to arrest one person. That's evidence that they are scared. If they weren't scared, they wouldn't have to put on this kind of public display of power. And so just take it for what it is. If the CCP sends 200 people to arrest one person, they're trying to intimidate you into silence. And they wouldn't have to intimidate you into silence if they weren't afraid of you. But they are, so they do.
You know, Bill, that was such a perfect answer, because it leads into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. If Beijing was trying to intimidate Hong Kong, and clearly you're right, and that's exactly what they were trying to do. On Tuesday, CNN's Hong Kong bureau filed a report that says intimidation might not be working, or at least not yet. Scott, let me read this to you. Apple Daily, that's Jimmy Lai's newspaper, has increased its production and vowed to keep operating after police raided its headquarters and arrested its founder on Monday. In a statement on its verified Facebook page, there's your foreign collusion under the national security law. In a statement on its verified Facebook page, the publication said it produced 550,000 copies of Apple Daily on Tuesday, up from its normal circulation of about 70,000. That's a huge increase. In a post Monday, it urged people in Hong Kong to buy the paper and show their support, a message seemingly heeded by many people who were seen lining up for copies. Scott, does that sound like the people of Hong Kong are intimidated?
I think what it sounds like is, despite everything that the Chinese communist regime has tried to do, communist oppression is good for business. It's like you sell a lot more newspapers. It occurred to me while you guys were talking about this, I thought, if you've got a good argument, you make the argument. If you don't, you've got to shut the other guy up. Because if the winning argument continues to be made, more and more people are going to hear it, and you'll sell more papers, and more people will read about it, and more people will join the movement. You just don't see a whole lot. Like, you don't see Xi Jinping standing up and making the argument about how great it is to be under communist domination. Like, what is the argument from his side other than, hey, this is our territory, we get to do what we please with it, and you'll shut up and like it. So I guess what I would say to the people of Hong Kong, and this sounds really supercilious for somebody in the safety of Texas to say, but hang in there. You're on the right side. Endure. I know you are, and I know you will. But it's just like, I don't know how long it's going to take, but this will not stand. The earth has been on a steady progression away from what Xi Jinping somehow in 2020 has managed to continue doing. And at some point, that's going to collapse. And when it does, the racket from that will make waves around the world. And you will be seen as the freedom fighters of this generation. And Hong Kong will be free.
Scott, you just reminded me of something. Hong Kong is a former British Crown colony, just like the United States was when we were 13 colonies. And one of the complaints in the Declaration of Independence was that Americans, who were thinking of ourselves as Americans by this point, or at least starting to, could be whisked away to Great Britain for trial. And that was one of the things that caused us to take up arms. I don't know if Hong Kong can take up arms, but I do know that their complaints against the Chinese dictatorship on the mainland is absolutely legitimate and very much in line with our own grievances from the 1770s. When I first read this yesterday and how completely and quickly Beijing was trying to impose its will on Hong Kong, my first thought was maybe this was some sort of a dress rehearsal for an eventual invasion of Taiwan, and how quickly could they impose order on that free island, the so-called renegade province. But then I saw the CNN report out of Hong Kong with everybody buying up Apple Daily newspapers, and I thought, well, if this is a dress rehearsal, they're going to need a few more rehearsals before they get this right, which just made my heart absolutely swell. But there's a fiction here that we've kind of clung on to for far too long. There's an entrepreneurial spirit in Chinese culture that has always been there. And when it got that entrepreneurial spirit got married to British notions of civil rights and all the rest in Hong Kong, you ended up with this phenomenon of a city that raised itself from a tiny fishing village to one of the great financial centers of the entire world in almost nothing flat. It's just a success story almost without parallel anywhere in the world. And that, I think, is what keeps the spirit of Hong Kong alive. What is different here, however, is this notion of one country, two systems. It's not true. That's what we've held on to since the handover agreement was signed in 1985, that China could be one country and have a sort of a British-based liberty system on this tiny island city and communist oppression on the mainland. But it's not one country. Hong Kong is effectively its own country, and it probably has been since British legal traditions started to take root. It's been two countries, two systems since the handover in 1997. And what Beijing is trying to do is make it one country, one system. But you can't do that because Hong Kong really is its own place now, just as much as Singapore or Taiwan. And that spirit, I hope, I pray, keep Hong Kong alive and free for a long time to come. And that is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. I want to remind you that content like this needs supporters like you. So if you're not paying for this, please click over to BillWhittle.com. Join us today. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.